Welcome back, everyone. I am Caliph, son of Kolar, and with me is the Admiral of the Victory, the USS Victory, I should say. And we are here to discuss with you, of course, TNG's uh, Star Trek, Next Generation. Of course, we kind of do just about all the Star Treks because we are Trekkers or Trekkies. We love the shows. And we thought it would be kind of fun to go down that path of, are they still as great as we remember they were? And I remember time has changed and everything has changed due to the fact that we have all this information right at our fingertips, and fan backlash over this and fan backlash over that. But I could say that most of these still stand a good standing. They still, there are some ridiculous things, but to say the least, Star Trek is still something that I can sit there and watch and just be like, I'm home.
Yes.
I can't say that for a lot of shows, you know what I mean? But Star Trek is still one of those shows, just about the older stuff, just about all that, I can just sit there and just be like, I'm home. I don't have to worry about anything. So, Admiral, your thoughts on this right now? Let me see if I can get it perfectly on the. There we go.
Okay.
This show.
This episode is called, looks like 110010001. And looks like we have I think they're called the Binars, and they're coming in to the Enterprise because the Enterprise is going to a star base to get, so the Enterprise can pretty much get like a tune-up, so to speak. So anyway, these aliens get on the Enterprise. They're speaking of their own little language, and there's time for the rest of the crew to go on shore leave. So they get off the ship, and Rikers is still left. He's kind of decided just to stay on the Enterprise. Picard is on the Enterprise, but everybody else pretty much go down. Riker goes into the holodeck, and we actually see Riker plays the trombone for the first time in this episode. Throughout all the seasons, he talks about how much he likes playing. We've seen other times where he's played, but when I saw this episode, I literally remember that scene, him going in there, seeing the lady at the bar in the, red dress. And, he picks up the sax. They're in New Orleans, and he starts playing. So watching just that scene really brought back memories. I didn't remember the whole episode, but I don't know, something about that scene that, when I watched it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this one. I also, when I was looking up some notes on this episode, it was a male voice on the computer, and Miss Rottenberry, it was actually one of her first few times of actually being the computer voice. I was trying to find out who was the computer. Don't want my Alexa to start talking to me. And actually, when I looked it up, it was just an unnamed person. So unfortunately, whoever this person is didn't even really get credited. And, when I looked, I Googled it a few times, so I didn't know. But that's pretty much the beginning of the episode. Calibus, what do you think about it?
Minuet. Yes. And how Riker was, enthralled with it, but that was back then, to have that type of technology. And I think I kind of take that with more of the VR stuff now that we have the Oculus headsets and stuff, because when you're in there, it's so it's so real and in your face. Although a little augmented, where it's you can almost get vertigo and get sick because of the way it
Yeah.
happened. But I would love to been able to live in that time period where you could, can you imagine going to a door and computer plug in your favorite novel or whatever else, and now you're a character in that novel. You know what I mean? You know, I think in one of the episodes, someone had said that. Can you imagine that you could take most of your resources just for recreation instead of war or something like that?
Yeah.
And that always kind of stuck with me. Um, and with this being, that computer code thing and binary, uh, they take the Enterprise because they needed help, the little binary guys. And for them, it was just, a yes or no, uh, question for them. And they didn't want to take no for an answer. So instead of it being a 50-50 shot, they were like, we're just going to go ahead and do it. And you know what I mean? I guess it was that old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. And that's what we get. But I thought the costume designs were great. I thought the holodeck thing was great. That they reprogrammed everything to keep them occupied in the holodeck. You know what I mean? Long enough for them to be like, hey, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? I loved it. I thought it was a great episode. At first, when I remember seeing it at first, I just kept thinking to myself, I was younger and I was like, not it. But now that I'm older, I kind of liked it. I don't know if it was just the safety of the episode, or now that I'm older and I should know a lot better on certain things or whatever else. It was just, for me, it was just great television.
Mm-hmm.
It was just great television, Um,
Well, I noticed about this episode, and I think I've said it in a couple of episodes that we did earlier. At one point, I think Picard asked Wesley to watch the binars.
yeah,
And, and I said that kind of, one time before where, he's an infant, kind of, sort of, and, again, y'all have him watching these alien races that, that get on the ship. Now this is definitely, you can tell, kind of older Star Trek, because I don't think any years later any of the newer series at the time will have this, Wesley watch this alien race, but which I thought it was just a little bit weird, off centered. But I guess if they're looking at it where they are pretty much a mind race where they have to put their, so to speak, essence, I guess, in the computer, this finish what it comes out to be, because their planet pretty much was destroyed or going to be destroyed in a supernova. I still think it was just a little odd, again, to have Wesley watch the aliens, even though he's smart. I'm not a big fan of Wesley. There he goes. While everybody else leaves the Enterprise. I mean, for me, I think that was kind of a little negative for me for this episode. I mean, I enjoyed the episode. Like I said, I remember the lady at the bar in the red dress. Riker being Riker, just put a smile on my face. He was just quick to go in there and, talk to this lady. And of course, by the end of the episode, he went back in, and because she was part of the Barnard's, I guess, technology, she was gone. And that was kind of sad, but it did kind of bring a little smile to my face seeing, Riker, okay, he's doing his thing again, which is funny. I don't think a first officer should, but the guys kind of had their sex symbols, so to speak, with Tasha and Troy. So obviously, the women, we had Riker, I don't know if I would want a guy that wants to jump everybody's bones every time he meets a new race, but it was funny to see.
Well, it worked for Captain Kirk. I mean, Captain Kirk didn't care what you were.
True. There's no racial in there.
Kirk didn't care as long as you were female. And, I guess that was the whole thing, that, this young guy would be like the Captain Kirk,
Yeah.
Because the captain was no longer allowed to do the way team stuff anymore. And that always made sense to me, because your captain, why is he down there? Because if he dies, now the ship's in danger. The first officer should be doing all that stuff. You know what I mean? That's what a first officer is for. But Captain Kirk Jr.
Well, which I do agree, but I think it was just, I don't know, a little bit sign of the times, because when Cisco left DS9, which he did often, I didn't mind it. When of course Kirk left the Enterprise, which pretty much every episode, I didn't mind it. I didn't even really mind when Janeway left, which she didn't leave as much as Cisco and Kirk did. Picard, I think just because of the kind of captain he was, I can see him being on the ship, where the other captains, I did not mind. And it kind of makes sense for them to leave the ship and not to stay up there.
Mm. No, I can agree with that. I mean, it was just crazy, the more we talk about stuff like that with the certain characters and Riker, and how he did things. He was definitely our Captain Kirk of the of the show, because it seemed like everybody, anytime that he got near somebody and beamed down to a planet, he was there. He was doing his thing.
Now, who do you think was better at that ploy? Would you say that Captain Kirk was better at it, or would you like Riker doing it? Who was more smoother than
Kirk? Was the man. Kirk was just, I mean, he was that old school, and I think, and I hate to say it, because I know how it sounds, but that old school man, this, I'm going to protect you and hold you, and you know what I mean, and I guess swoon you.
Yeah.
Versus the upcoming slick, let me throw my eye out at you and wink at the, at the bar, and I'm kind of young and flashy and peacocking, and Kirk had that, that old school presence. You know.
I agree.
Plus, I mean, your ex is on the ship, man. I couldn't operate around that. That's, my ex is there, and it's like that last episode we did, and there he is in that he was quick to throw that on. Nipple all out there and whatnot. I'm like, come on, man, cover up. But a sign of the times. It was definitely, let me get over here. We have Marky Mark saying it was a sign of the time. It was, and that's the only problem I have. And I'm still waiting for this. God, the next Star Trek show.
Strange Worlds.
Strange New Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love Anson Mount. I like him as Pike. I really do. The thing I don't like, though, is like
that last episode.
What?
Yeah.
And then, he attacks the fans, telling them to grow up. And, it's, I get it. You want to charge that mountain. But not every fan that is saying that is critical of you or your work. It's just that, as a captain, especially from that era,
yeah,
you should be a hard-nosed, I loved
The
what was his
Archer.
name? No, well, Archer was good too, but the actor who played the original Pike,
Oh yeah.
what's his
Yeah.
name?
Yeah. He was only in that. He was in two episodes, wasn't he? The first one
Yeah,
later on. The
I just
cave.
found him from the cage. Actor Jeffrey Hunter.
Mhm.
Jeffrey Hunter. Again. I know it was that time period, that '60s, and well, the late '60s, and that time period of men were men and women were women, and I get that, but you have to have a command presence.
Yeah.
This thing of everybody talking out of turn and talking any old kind of way to a captain, as someone who sits on a bridge of a ship,
Yeah.
are you allowing your crew to Admiral, are you allowing
Um,
your crew to
Let me see. No. Well, first of all, if they're on the bridge of the ship, they should already have those qualities of
Mhm.
knowing, you know, the stage of command. So the second you go out and do something, which these characters, I hate to say, in Strange New Worlds do regularly, you know, it's time for you to go. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one thing I loved about Janeway. You know,
Oh
what was
yes.
his name?
Kim.
Yeah, well, no, I feel bad for Kim. I'm not talking about Kim. I'm talking about Paris. You know, he was demoted a couple of times and went back.
Yeah.
Because he went out of place. And yes, she gave him chances. He, did what he did. She gave him back. Then he did it what he did. She gave him back. But these people in, I hate to say, in Strange New Worlds, it's every episode. And,
Yeah.
you know, I wasn't in the military. My dad was in the military. And I don't remember my dad. I mean, he would come home and, talked about his people over him, and we all do in any job. But
Right.
to do it in front of my boss's face regularly, no, that's not cool. I mean, I've been known to do it, but regularly, no.
Yeah. That was one thing. Me and my dad were actually playing a Star Trek game, and I had asked him something. He goes, "I don't understand why all my subordinates are questioning my orders. I gave you an order, follow it." And that stuck with me. Picard, same way. And Janeway, I remember when Harry Kim said something to Janeway. She goes, "It's not crunch time now, Mr. Kim." You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And now I get to Pike and Chris. Chris, are you going to say something, Chris? And I'm like, what is that? Y'all way too friendly. Way too friendly.
Yeah.
Now he has intimate dinners in his crew quarters, and I like that old gritty. I mean, I'm into the grit, but I digress. But I'm still looking forward to Strange New Worlds. Don't get me wrong, folks. It's hopefully
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot better than there were some episodes that took me back, and there were some episodes that made me go, eh. But at least it was something still on the air.
True.
So up next is what wait a minute. Do I have the
Too
right one?
short a season.
Right. Yes. Okay, I do have it right. Okay, good. Yes. Okay. Too short
Now,
a season.
I actually remember this episode too, because when the actor, when I saw him when he got younger, because he's taking this experimental drug, you know, for him and his wife, but he didn't give it to his wife. Um, you know, when
Wait a
I
minute now. Don't you remember what he was saying? This was for us.
yes, I'm like, oh, I mean, she didn't want it, but I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I get him taking it just to see how it works. I don't have a problem with that. but she was definitely in the right to be upset, to, to storm off and, hey, look, you didn't think about us. You thought about yourself, and for him to be like, well, I'm not going to start taking it. And, I took for both of us. And yeah, I can get you some more later. Wow.
I mean, that's kind of the aging dilemma of everybody. And my character on Defense Post United, I make the log where I hand you over the ship. I already have somebody working on the station. Now there's no more. There's nothing else for me to do but to actually retire. Um, and then I bring this bird of prey back in to kind of give me this last jolt of, come on, we can. You still got some years left. We can still do this type of thing. And I mean, I see his point. Aging man, he's made it to top echelons of Starfleet. You're this master negotiator, or but once you get to that point, your time is done. Whether you wanted to give her some of that medicine or not to keep her young with you, I question, because let's face it, in these things, our female counterparts are a lot more wiser at it, because of course, as men, we want to be that young stallion once more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Your time is past.
Well, this happens in real life. I mean, how many times that we have looked on to a movie, our singers, our actors, and they're Botoxing. Not that I'm saying anything's wrong with it. I would never do it. But, you're looking at some of these, stars, and it's like, do you realize you're not 30 anymore? And they're doing whatever they can to try to look younger. And I know sometimes I'll scroll in Facebook, and sometimes Facebook shows, what a certain person looked like when they were 30 versus
Madonna.
now as they're 55, 60. And I'll be honest, I'm a woman, but there's a lot of men that I'm like, oh my God, how did I like that when they were 30? They're so much attractive now, with the gray and, a couple of wrinkled lines. I mean, we watched Pretty Woman the other day, and I was like, yeah, Richard Gere. I mean, now he's just old, but man, when he was like 50, oh my God.
Right. Well, I mean, I look how well George Clooney has kept himself up.
Oh Lord, he looks so good.
I mean, even Brad Pitt. I still love watching Brad Pitt do his, that Bullet Train movie. I that's my guilty little pleasure. I will sit there and just watch him work, but I love them two together.
Mm-hmm.
They did this thing on Apple TV, the show where they're, I guess, hitmen. And watching these two together, you know what I mean? I love that buddy relationship, but these men kept themselves at a certain standard. And, I look at this episode, and it's just, to me, it's just a reminder. They rated a 6.1 out of 10 stars. I would give it half of that, because when he said, but I got some for you too, I was doing this for us, I'm like, really now? Really? Because if anything, hey, I have this drug. It can make you young. It can make you this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to risk you trying it first.
Yep.
I'm going to try it, and then I will let you try it after we see the results on me.
Yes.
And again, there's always that woman reminding, no, I'm happy the way I am. I thought you were too. The glory days, sometimes they're behind you, and what is in front of you is still more important than what's ever behind you.
Yeah.
And I don't think he got that until, well,
Well, to the end.
you know, yeah, yeah, because you're taking something that you shouldn't be taking in the first damn place.
Yeah. Well, it's a
But
drug.
right, and again, I still say, 5 out of 10. Would I watch it if it came on? Oh, of course I would, because it's Star
Hmm.
Trek. It's I mean, we still get um the okay, let's do this. I mean, we get to see little Gates. Look at her. Look at
Hmm.
and
There he is, the Admiral.
you know, and that's still a nice picture. I would love to
Yeah.
get those two to sign a picture like that together.
Yeah.
Um,
He was
and,
so full of himself too, which was kind of, you
and then the
know,
younger he got, the more pompous of an ass he got. Right?
yeah, definitely. And come to find out, he's the one that gave the weapons to
Yeah.
them that kind of started the war. Dude, wow. I mean, he kind of had, trying to go in and fix what he kind of started, years earlier, but he didn't have to do that by taking the drug.
And that's. I think if that's the age-old dilemma of, if I had more time, I could go back and fix these mistakes that I made.
Yeah.
I can correct the thing if my body was like this. If my only again, I always say, well, I say this now as an older man. um, when you lose a lot of things, you start to panic and you're wondering what's going to be next, or who's going to be next, or
Hmm.
whatever. But you got to look at what you have and move forward with what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be this great Federation negotiator, and like you said, it's a drug. The
Yeah.
bottom line is that's something you shouldn't be doing. You know, and that's always the end game to it. These are the forces with the weapons.
Hmm.
And look at, man, just arrogance is
Yeah.
just is exuding from his body. The
Well, he sat in
arrogance
the
of it.
captain's chair.
Oh yeah, that's
Some
right.
point,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you have control over, pretty much the mission. And Captain Picard already said earlier in the episode, yes, you got the mission, but this is my ship. He's had no business sitting in the chair. That's, no, you can do it from Troy's chair.
She ain't using it. But this is always for me a highlight, being able to sit down and talk Trek with you. Of course, we had Mr. Bo Llewellyn joining us at one time, uh, and that was great because Bo knew all the little
Yes, ins and
side
outs.
scenes and little tidbits that we know that you and I didn't get to talk about. But I love the fact that I can talk to you about Star Trek, and you get it, you understand it, you know what I mean? And it's, oh my God, it's so great. I would love to get some other people on here with us
Yeah,
to talk about some episodes, you know what I mean? Um, Maybe we can,
yeah.
later down the road or whatever else. I found someone that was talking to me about, oh man, I love me some Star Trek. I'm like, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see if you love you some Star Trek. But I do have something for you. Just give me a second. I want to
Okay.
show you this. I'm gonna hold on. Let me do this. Hold on. I'll be right back.
Okay. Now, look, y'all, this is not an official Star Trek shirt, but you see what I did? I saw this in the store and I was like, you know what? I can wear this shirt when, I can't wear my costume. So, this is just shows just how much I love I love Star Trek. My dad got me interested in it years ago. when episodes come on, I mean, I got my favorite ones. I sit down and watch. I just left my husband's aunt house and she didn't quite finish it, but I got the beads and the Enterprise. So next time we go live, I'm gonna have her finish work. And she put her flag out. She has a redskin flag, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to get a pole so I can put my Starfleet flag up. And Mark's like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, I'm yelling as I'm walking to the car, Star Trek is better.
Well, I was at Yes Toys, and of course, any Star Trek stuff that comes our way, Jim always says, hey, Calibus, I know you're a fan here. Get this out of my store. But we got these.
Nice.
So,
oh my goodness.
I have this pin here for you. This is your pin. So next time I see you, I will gratiate you with your Star Wars BAM Geek pin.
That is something that I would sneak and wear to work. When I work in retail, and I wear a mask when I'm at work, and I have a fleet of Star Trek masks. We're not supposed to wear, but my boss don't even say anything. I just wear my little Starfleet and my colors and the Enterprise, and nobody says anything. And I'm like, yeah, you just come and tell me. Yeah.
Well, look, I have my communicator, my TOS communicator that hooks up to my phone. And every now and then I break that bad boy out and I'll set it on the desk, and then you'll hear all the things. You'll hear Spock, you'll hear Kirk, and when the phone rings, I get the beeps, and I love it. But what I really want is get me one of those badges, because now they got the Bluetooth badges now.
Bluetooth badges.
And I would love to do that. You know what I mean? Just to be walking around and hit the badge and keep on. Yeah. Go ahead. You know what I mean? And watch people freak out in the stores. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But guys, we're here on a Wednesday because I was exhausted yesterday. We will be back in 2 weeks on a Tuesday.
Yes.
Our regular scheduled time, and that will be May 6th.
Okay.
May 6th, and we'll be discussing 2 episodes. And May 6th, Tuesday. Did you want to stick to 9:00? Give you enough time to do whatever?
That'll be great. That'll
That'll give me a little bit chance to unwind too as well. I kind of like how you did that, because I was like, ooh, yeah, that feels kind of good.
Yeah.
I like that. TNG. All right, guys. I want to thank you, and I want to thank, of course, the Admiral for joining us. Look us up on Facebook. We are on United Defense Outpost United, and of course, the Proud Warriors of Kronos Klingon page. We are there. Come say hi. If there's anything you would like us to critique, let us know, and we can do something out there for you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right?
Definitely.
So I leave you with live long and prosper, and of course, Qapla'.